Watch me ride.
Hey everybody, so people have asked me to do a video about editing, and you might think, and I'm probably going to get dislikes for this, think that I'm going to do a video showing you how to physically edit, how to move stuff around, and I'm not going to do that, and I'll explain to you why in number 1 of my top 10 tips for video editing. I've been editing video now for about 10 years, because I started a little while before I started YouTube. It was one of the reasons I started YouTube is because I used to be a photographer and I wanted to do some more video work and need to know how to edit video, and recording stuff on the bike was a great way of doing that, and then it grew and grew. I'm not the best editor in the world, but I do understand what makes videos more watchable and what makes them less watchable, and the way that things are edited. And if you're completely new to editing, then some of this will not be obvious, and I'm going to give you some gems in this that will help you make videos which are much more entertaining to people. So my top 10 tips for new video editors are: number 1, learn the basics, and this is where you might have thought I was going to show you a program and how you do this, how you do that. I'm not going to do it because it's different with every different program, and it's not difficult. There are millions of videos out there that literally can teach you how to use the editing software that you have. You really only have 2 options, Adobe or Sony, generally. I mean, there are other editing programs out there, of course, but generally most YouTubers, low-level ones, will use Adobe, or even the higher ones use Adobe, Adobe something, I can't think what it's called, but it's the Adobe one. Or they use Sony Movie Studio or Sony Vegas Pro. If you buy the software like I do, because the pros are really expensive, I use the entry-level stuff. I use Sony. I started with Sony Movie Maker 12, I think it was, and I've been using 13 for a long time. I then got 14, and I've had problems with 14, even though it's got a few aspects to it that I would rather use, but I tend to just use 13. So the program that I actually use is Sony Movie Maker Platinum 13. And there are millions of videos out there on how to do stuff with this program. I know this because this is how I learned to edit. I didn't know anyone who did this stuff. I got the program and I tried to import stuff, and it was so new and complicated and confusing, I didn't know where to start, and I felt like giving up. But now I just went on YouTube and got more and more videos, which is probably what you're doing if you're watching this. But the only things that you actually need to know are how to import the video into the editor, and kind of what settings you want to be recording at. If you're doing YouTube, motovlogging, if it's slow moving stuff, 1080p, 30 frames a second is the minimum really. You can go to 24 if you're doing some arty-farty thing, but just 30 frames a second to save arguments. If you're doing something that's faster, or you want it to be more crisp and more detailed, 60 FPS. My videos, 1080p, 60 FPS. If I had the option to go up to higher levels, like 2.7K, I'd probably do that. I wouldn't do 4K yet, because unless you have a screen to display it back on, there's no great advantage of having 4K. Though it would future-proof your videos. What it also does is it means you have a load less memory on your memory cards, and the computer you use has to be way more powerful, and the processing takes loads longer. So I wouldn't be too fussed about trying to stick to trying to get 4K and all that to start with. 1080p, 30 or 60 FPS is completely fine. The 3 things you only really need to know is how to import. Well, that's easy. You open the program and you click and drag your video files in there. You'll have lines, they're called timelines basically. So up and down is different lines, left to right is time. So you have one that's the video line and you have one that's your audio line. They should be locked together. And all you then do, if you imagine your one video is these 2 strips, so you've got your 2 ribbons, video and sound, and you watch it through and you're like, okay, I want to cut this bit. So then you want to cut that, and then you want to splice on another bit. The way you do that, there's 2 ways. You either cut where you want the video to stop, and then cut where you want it to restart, and then delete the bit in the middle. Or you do what I do, which is a thing called auto ripple, but it can be annoying at times. Is you cut, you then drag it back to this one, because you're closing down that video against on the timeline. The start point's getting wiped up away, so it starts later. So the point I want it to do, let go, and it flips and it sticks those back together. Well, not together, they're separated, but in the timeline they're touching, so they will be rendered together. Render is how you get the video out. So all you actually need to know is how to get it in and how to cut it and put it together and then render it out. That is 99% of the editing that you'll do. It's just cut, And sometimes transitions, which just means that you overlap them and you get a transition, a fade between the two. You can pull fade ends on the end of your ribbons of information, and it'll fade down or fade up. It's very intuitive, it's not difficult. There are plenty of things out there to teach you how to physically edit. Because to me, physical editing, the ability to put stuff together, is about 5% of it. Just because you can edit a video doesn't mean you can edit a good video. You can just edit a video. So that is tip number 1. Learn the basics, learn from YouTube videos, practice, just take some video of your cat, and if you've got a cat or whatever, and just cut it up and just try cutting. Just cut, put together and render out. Render settings, they get a little bit more complicated, but there are presets in there that should help you. But the long and the short of it is you just make sure you set it to 1080p, 60 FPS. I up the bit rates and things, which is some data there a bit. And that's basically it. Yeah, you can put in overlays and you have intros and all this stuff, but when you actually learn how to do all that stuff, it's very easy. And it will come with time. Once you understand the basics, you'll understand the next bit. And then you just, the way that me and Jake, the Garden Snake, because we were both learning to edit about the same time, we used to help each other as we were learning this program. I discovered something, he discovered. I mean, when I discovered one thing, I will include this in the basics, and I will include this as a basic thing. In Sony Movie Maker, okay, so you've got your image, your video, and if you move your head side to side, it looks really like doubled up, so you've got like 2 frames chasing each other. It's called ghosting. Disable resample. My God, I am sick of watching videos from people which are all ghosty because they didn't disable resample. I don't know if it's something that's available in other programs or whether it calls it a different thing. I know in Sony Movie Maker 14 it does something weird, and it says interlace flicker where it would normally say that, but it doesn't seem to solve the problem. So all I can say is, whatever it is, it's called disable resample, and it will turn your ghosting double image when you move backwards and forwards really quickly into a sharp, crisp image. Do it! Do not make a ghosty image just because you didn't do one click. But as I say, me and Jake, we used to have to do that individually, and then one day I discovered how to do the entire line in one go. Because if you do it before you edit, you just, you got one stream, you go, disable resample, done, and it remembers it from that point. If you cut your image up into 100 different things, you have to go on each one and go, disable resample, disable resample, disable resample, until, as I say, one day I discovered how you actually clicked on everything and then went through a different menu to get to that, to then do everything in one go. I remember when I told Jake that for the first time, he was like, I fucking love you! And that was years ago. Okay, so number 1 is out of the way, that's the basics. That's the bit you probably thought this video was going to be about. Now this is going to be about what actual editing is about. Number 2, audio is key. You can have a slightly crappy image, but as long as the audio is good, that's the most important thing. I really hope the audio is good in this video because I know I'm slightly further away from the camera than I normally am, and it's windy outside, and people are going to say your audio is crap. But audio is key. It's more important than the quality of image. Trust me, it's the truth. Do everything you can to get good audio. Now, most of that happens with the microphone and the things that you use, but you would like things to be always be under. In the same photography, you don't want to overexpose, you don't want to peak past something, because if you're peaking the audio, you can't regain any of that. It's better to have it recording quieter and then lift it up a little. And there are settings and plugins and adaptation bits. You can change how much gain it's got, and you can change the bass, and you can play with all the sound. But on a very simple thing, get the audio coming in from the camera to be as good as you possibly can. That's really important. It's not really part of editing, but you will have to do less audio tweaking if your audio is good out of your camera. And the second part, part 2, is picking the right frame rate and picking the right quality. And I've already talked about that in part 1. I didn't mean to. But yeah, as I've said, 1080p is the minimum these days, 60 FPS. Anything below that is kind of, it needs to be slow moving stuff. This sort of thing, 30 FPS, 24 FPS, absolutely fine. Obviously that's less frames per second that the program literally has to go through every single image. So if it only has to do 30 frames a second, it's going to take half as long as it has to do 60 frames a second. If it's slow moving like this, I could probably have this at, say, 24, 23, and you wouldn't notice the difference. If I go much lower than that, you're going to start seeing jumps between the stills. But 60 FPS, 1080p, about the bare minimum. Number 3. This I've put down as help the editor, block speech, retry lines if you mess up. What this basically means is, when you're recording, help yourself later. When I edit, I look at the audio mostly, because I know when I'm talking. And that's why I say block speech. So if I'm going to be talking about a certain subject, and I'm talking about it now, I'm going to keep talking. If I have to stop for some reason, I make sure there's a small gap there, so I can see the gap and understand where I am. it helps you out. Also, if you mess something up, rather than just trying to go back and re-say that one word, go back to the beginning of the sentence. So you can go for, you've got like the last block of speech was correct. Then you have the next block of speech was you messing it up. So then what you do is you cut that one out that goes to the next block of speeches as you saying the same thing you were saying in the one you messed up in, but it's not got any of the, like, if I said the wrong word and then shoved in a different word in the middle, you don't like a jump up like this. Not pleasant. People don't like it. It can work for comedy timing and stuff, but generally you want to try and keep things blocked. And how to say, I can edit much faster now than I used to be able to because I help myself by doing these things like blocking speech and repeating whole lines rather than just trying to wedge a word back in or starting again from that word, because the way that speech works is it's not really a word, a word, a word, a word, a word, a word. It's a flow of noises which blend together. There's not really a lot in between, and if you mess up one word in the middle of this, it's very difficult to shove in another word from somewhere else. Okay, so number 4 actually also has a lot to do with number 8, so I'm going to kind of do number 4 to start with. Cut the dead air. If you're particularly, now I deal with motorcycling videos obviously, so it may be different from what you're doing, but kill the dead air. If you're riding and you stop talking for a moment, don't leave a pause for very long. It's what bores people, because their brain needs to be new thing, new thing, new thing, new thing, new thing, new thing. Or if the scenery is the interesting thing, or you're telling a story through what you're showing, then it doesn't need to be that. But if you're going to be talking about a subject, it needs to be on it and on it and on it and on it, and cut those dead spaces out. Anything more than about this much, you definitely want to remove. Not all the time. Sometimes I'll purposefully leave a bit because it seems to make the flow work better, but that's another question we'll get into. Another thing. But yeah, cut. Just if you just took a video, your standard motovlog, because you know people put up motovlogs unedited, they go, oh, I can't be asked editing. Well, I appreciate that you can't be asked editing, but you'll probably find that most people can't be asked watching because you can't be asked editing, unless you're particularly good at it. I used to edit very little in my old videos. Now I edit more than ever, basically because because I've been doing YouTube for a long time. I'm very careful about the things that I say. I constantly have a monitor of, if I say it in this way, are they going to get the intention and the meaning of what I want to say? Because one of the hardest things to get across to an audience is what you mean and what you feel. Because some just can't pick up on it. Maybe you put it across wrong. Some people want to try and twist it into something else. So I make sure I say things in the way and in the intention that I wanted to say them. But as I say, if you took your normal unedited vlog and you just cut out the dead spaces, it would be better. Unless one of those things was a particularly interesting thing that you didn't need to be talking about. But these are my tips, and I know most of you are into motovlogging. Although the same thing is really applied to this sort of video where I'm in front of the camera. Also means I can read my checklist in between and not look like I'm reading my checklist, even though I am. You obviously know I am. And also, continuing on part 4, if you do have dead air and you're leaving a long space of time because you're showing a scenery or something, that is a classically good time to introduce a piece of music, but it needs to fit. But we'll get onto that more in part 8. Number 5. Tell your story with flow. Good editing isn't seen unless it's for comedy. These are just the notes I wrote to remind myself. That I was supposed to cut out and not tell you about. See? Comedy. It's not really. Not funny. You tell the story with the edit. I tend to make videos, I try to have a beginning, a middle and an end. Most of my motovlogs are normally, the beginning is kind of a greeting and what's going on, what I'm going to be doing, what I expect to do that day, to bring people on board with me. Like, you know, you whip them up, you're like, come with me, you're like, right, we're doing this, we're going there, hopefully this will happen, hopefully that'll happen, everything will be great. Then you have the middle, which is the kind of the getting part there, that you might talk more about the thing you're going to do at the end. You might just include a few bits if the thing at the end is the main important point, but if it's equally spaced, the middle is also the place that you can chat and talk about different things, but you don't want to do that. What you want to make sure you do is that you then round that into an ending which answers all the questions. Don't leave open questions unless you want to. It needs to end in a nice, in the same way that you, as I say, all stories, a beginning, a middle and an end. It doesn't mean there's a story, this is what's going to happen, how it's happening, that's what happened. It's more just the pacing of it. It's not always true for my videos, but it is the general approach that I have. Unless it's for comedy, in which case things are completely changed, because comedy is all about timing. Number 6 is don't rush editing if you can. Now, some of my best videos, well, funniest videos, have been an idea that I've had, I've gone and recorded it, I've then come straight home, edit it, put it online in a couple of hours. And then all the skits. Because you get these ideas for the skits, all the shots are there in your head, you know what you want to do, and you just reproduce it, throw it out there, and it's done. Other videos, this is what I do on most videos, I will edit them, and then I'll leave them for about a day or so. Because I naturally have a buffer, as a lot of you may or may not know, my videos are always at least 4 or 5 days behind normally, if not a week or more. Which is why sometimes when I'm talking to people on social media, they don't get the severity of an issue that it was not 2 weeks before. Like with my back, for instance, the videos, people have been seeing me on social media saying, you know, my back is absolutely screwed. And then they see me riding a bike and they're like, well, it can't be that bad. And it's like, this actually was filmed 2 weeks ago. But that's why I say I have plenty of time to edit something, leave it for days and come back to it. But what I do, I'll rough edit the video and then I'll leave it. And then in a few days' time, because I'm working on a stream of videos, you know, every day I'm still editing, but I'm doing the other videos in between. I do a process of a block edit, get it about right. Then I'll go off and work on other things. Then when I know it's coming up to be using that video, I'll watch it through again. Sometimes I'm like, you got it first time, it's fine. Sometimes I'm like, nah, I want to change that a little bit, I want to do this, I want to do that. Sometimes you're like, don't want this video anymore. Because you can say something in a way at the time that you didn't really mean for it to come across. And you don't realise it was coming across that way at the time, and you didn't mean it to come across that way, and people are going to take it the wrong way. And you realise that days later because you're not in the emotional moment of it, as it were. But it also helps you because if you're always editing video like I am, I kind of forget the video. So when I rewatch it, I'm not expecting to see everything I've just seen for the past hour of me editing. I'm watching it afresh like I would watch someone else's video, and I can pick out, oh, that needs to change, this isn't right, that's a bit jarring, or this video is no good. It also helps you pick up mistakes, like where you've left a tiny gap between 2 files on the timeline. You'll get a little black, it will go, like, you know, black video, or you get a quick flash. That's because someone hasn't butted up those video files. Those sorts of things help you catch it. Then you render it out, and we talked about rendering in the first thing. That's just about finding the right settings and the right formats to get your video out to put up onto the internet. And then my advice to you would be to upload that to YouTube private, and then you don't release it until it's hit its full quality. When you put a video onto YouTube, it's going to first come up, even if it's, no matter what quality it is, it's going to first come up 360p, then 480, then, you know, 720, 1080. You want it to get to its full quality because people don't want to watch potato quality, because if your biggest fans are watching your videos as soon as they come out, they're always watching in 360p, and it's just annoying. YouTube is a lot faster at this, but sometimes it doesn't. But it's always good to upload it, let it sit on private, and you can also then wait for it to get to full quality and watch it back. There is so many mistakes that you don't notice through editing, like little split seconds, because the preview window can be a little bit of what you're editing can be a bit delayed at times, depending on the quality and the speed of your computer. You can miss tiny little things. Rewatch the video is an absolute must. Do it just before you make it live, unless you really need to get this video up at that exact time, in which case you need to be prepped and get this done before. But put it up, watch it. If everything's okay, put your monetization, if you can get monetization ads in it, and put your outro, your thumbnail, end cards as they're called now, on, and Bob's your uncle, your video's good to go. But that's also one of the reasons you go back and check video after time, because it's better to find the mistake before you render it and upload it, because rendering and uploading is time consuming. So if you know, I want to get this video up online tonight, it needs to be up by 6. What's the time, 3 o'clock in the afternoon? Yeah, it'll be fine. Do this, render, upload, gets to 10 to 6, you've got to quickly watch your video back, and you find a big fuck up in it, and you're like, ah! Well, now you've got to go back, you've got to re-render, you've got to change it, re-render, re-edit. You've now delayed yourself to the point it's too late to put your video up if you wanted to put it up at 6 o'clock. Which meant you weren't prepared enough to, you know, as I say, that's why I get my videos ready a couple of days before, so they could go live. It also gives me the ability to put something up whenever I feel like it. If one video is not doing particularly well, I might stick another one up that I think will do better. If there's a particularly good video I've just put up, I might leave it slightly longer to get more views on it, because when you put the next video up, it tends to kill those. The old days of YouTube, it was simple. Day 1 it goes up, it starts getting picked up. Day 2 it gets a lot of views, and day 3 it tails off. So it's day 1, day 2, day 3. I'm fine with that. This is YouTube now. Day 1, day 2. Day 1, day 2, day, and then it ends before it even gets to day 3. Sometimes they do better. It's not going to always be negative. Sometimes, you know, day 1, day 2, day 3, things just grow and go without any reason. But that's one of the advantages of having the end cards they're doing now, is in the old days I used to actually have to edit in parts of the next video. So I'd have this video edited, the next video edited. So in the end of my current video I'd have the previous video and the next video playing without the snippets, and then I'd have annotations over the top of those. Now what you do is you put the end cards on, and it means you make a template of your outro. You know, mine with the birds. There's nothing on that, and at the end of the video, I just go into it, when it's uploaded, sorry, I choose which one I want to put online. I can just put last video, best reviewer, that's the two I normally use, or a playlist if it's something related to playlists, or if it's part of a playlist, I'll put the playlist in, because if this person's interested in this video, say for instance it was, I don't know, Project DIVI, where I was doing work to my XJ6, if they've seen me put the indicators and stuff on and they're interested by that, they'd probably be interested by how I did the tail tidy and other stuff. So playlists are good if you do what I do, which is a really mixed bag of videos. Number 7. Use the right camera for the job. If you're motor vlogging, a GoPro, a drift, well, not a drift so much anymore because you can't buy the Ghost S and that's the only really good one for motor vlogging. Those action cameras, they're great for motor vlogging or action stuff or stuff like that. GoPros are not intended for you to take on holiday to film your beach videos with your mates. Yes, if you're jumping around playing in the sea, throwing the cameras to each other, messing around, yeah, that's what they're for. If you're just filming landscapes or filming the place that you are, a super wide angle camera which makes everything look miles away unless it's right there, and when it is right there it's like wow with the bowed edges, that is not the right camera. So pick the right camera for the job. The cameras I use, I use a Ghost S, Drift Ghost S for my helmet camera. I'm currently using a little Canon camcorder for this sort of video. I have my digital SLR, which I also use for video, but this is for more arty-farty stuff. I have a DJI Osmo, the old original one, which I use for if I'm doing bike reviews and I want to get some nice steady cam shots, just of panning around the bike. That camera's used for that. I was planning to use that for some, like, you know, walking around places doing vlogging, like at the Sausage Fest. It'd be great, because I met somebody who first came there with one. But the audio on that thing is rubbish. It's absolutely awful. It's fantastic image quality, fantastic-ish stabilisation, but the audio from it is rubbish unless you use, well, I have to have a jack-to-jack that then goes into an audio recorder so I can adjust the levels and have a microphone so I can hear how it's... Point being, use the right camera for the right job. You can use GoPros for more up-close work like this with none of that effect of the wide-angleness, because you can buy adapters and stuff that go onto GoPro cases. Completely random, but wood turning with Tim. He is a wood turning channel that I watch, and he has a GoPro over the top of his lathe when he does his work, which gives a great perspective of the work that he does, but he seems to have an adapter on it, which I think brings it down to more of a standardised, you know, because, you know, the edges of this frame, they're not bowed out or anything, they're nice and square and straight, because the lens is not bowing it. And the other thing is, having two cameras is very handy, because if you want to take a second, if you want to film one thing from two angles, with either you've got to film it twice and try and copy it each time, that's not going to work. You can do it if you're saying one thing, you know, but if you're motor vlogging, a lot of people started doing this. I did it quite early on when I had the available cameras. Like I boot cam. I used to stick my second camera on my boot. And people were like, how the hell are you doing this? I'm like, I've used the head strap and attached it to my boot. It seems simple. And people love the boot camera or the low down camera angle, like when I'm riding. But there's massive advantages to having two cameras. One, it means that if, for instance, you have it facing you when you're riding around and it's not particularly interesting what's in front of you, just a view of you so they can get your mannerisms and your hand gestures and that sort of stuff. That makes it more interesting. If you get to a set of traffic lights and you're just talking, what would you rather do? View the guy, like, you know, you've got the sun behind you, or they've got the buildings behind you, and the person's talking to the camera, they're engaging with you. It feels far more interesting than just looking at a set of red traffic lights. You're sat at a set of red traffic lights like this. Now, I know I don't use two cameras as much as I used to, but part of that is because I use DIVI, and DIVI's not great for having a second camera facing me. I might find out if there's some ways using the mirrors and stuff, but they flop around and it gets vibrating in there. The other thing is the hidden edit. Well, actually, no, there is one other thing. Speeding. If you do go a little bit faster than the speed limit, it's quite nice to be able to switch back to your face and not what's viewing the dash, and that way you can show the sound and the speed and the sensation without showing the incrimination. even if they can see, like, you know, the road markings, they can probably work out how fast you were going. If they're seeing trees flying past you, or through the effect of a lens, they're going to be have a very difficult time to prove that. But that's by the by. The point is, what you can also do with that is that if I'm talking blah 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 blah, and then there's a dead gap, and then I continue what I'm saying, like I was saying earlier about blocking speech. If I switch to the forward-facing camera, to me, you don't think that much time's passed. You just assume that I've just finished saying that, and now I'm saying this. But what I'm actually done is I've done half a mile down the road since then. But then when I cut back to looking forward again, when I need the next block of speech, you don't notice that transition of all that distance, or the jumping. You've just seen person talking, cuts to the face, they're still talking, cuts back, they're still talking. But there's two edits in there at least, and you haven't seen them. And that is the key to good editing. Good editing is not seen unless it's used for comedy timing, for effect, for suspense, for all of those sorts of things. So one camera good, kind of essential actually when it comes to video editing. Two cameras, better, depending on what you're doing. You will find that most of the vloggers, the larger ones these days, I think, will use a two-camera setup so they can give different views. It makes things more interesting. So I was one of the very early adopters of doing that, because I've been vlogging longer than, well, since early 2011. I started vlogging, roughly. So I've been down the road a few times. So as I say, I should use two cameras more, but it's not quite as easy with this. But then DIVI, she's got permanent mounts on there, so I can stick a camera on the side of it. Number 8, music. If music helps tell a story, helps bring emotion, helps do something like that, then by all means add music, use it. It can really help you through those dead spots. If you're going through a nice land, you can have some music. Sometimes it's got. You can time things to the music, so I say you're going up some hill and there's some triumphant moment in the music. You make sure that it breaks as you break the top of the hill. This is obvious stuff. The other thing is, if you're doing a talking video, like I could do it in this, but I'm not going to because the information's more important. If I was doing, say, some mechanical thing, I might have very subtle music in the background. It's almost too quiet to hear. You just hear that gentle. But what it does is it helps in that. It helps bring rhythm to the video. It's not so jarring with the speech and the timing of you waiting for someone to do something. Your brain naturally feels like it's flowing in its rhythm because this little tiny beat that's going on in the background, and you don't really notice it. And again, like editing, good music use isn't heard. It's there because you know it's supposed to be there. I believe they say that, is it the Marvels or the other films, that if you try to actually imagine any of the music out of it, you can't think of it, but it's full of it throughout, and it's because it helps tell the story, but in a way that doesn't impose on the story. It just becomes part of the story. Number 9. This is harder to teach, and some people have it and some people don't, but understand that funny comes from timing. Comedy is all about timing. You can tell a joke and get the punchline a millisecond too late and it won't be funny. You get it at the right time and it becomes immensely funny because you're waiting for people to start thinking, blah, 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 and then they get to a certain point and then boom, the punchline hits them and it slaps them into it and they realise what's happening and they're laughing. I don't say I'm a particularly funny person. I can't say that it's my speciality or anything like that. I just do understand some comedy. I understand how time works, and just understand that you can tell a funny joke through images or have something funny happen, but the editing is what's going to make it funny. The way that it cuts in and out. Do research on this. One thing that I've found is quite helpful is if you go to things like Cinefx, I think is one channel, but basically learn about how the deconstruction of a shot, how it's used and how they use the image to tell a story. It's not the same when it comes to, because you're not making a full feature-length film, unless you are, in which case I really don't think you should be getting advice from me how to edit. You should get an editor to do that. And also, can I have my commission, please? It's important enough to make it a thing of its own. Understand that comedy, funny videos, lightheartedness comes with timing of videos and the way it's edited. And number 10! Do it your own way. Forget everything I just said. Try different stuff. Well, not everything. Some of it's fundamental. You can't go, I'm going to just use random render settings and see how this comes out. I'm going to put loads of reverb and stuff on my voice and it's no, that's not going to work. What I mean is, they're the ground rules, but what you do afterwards, how you put your cameras, how you edit it, what you say, what you do, how you construct it, that's you. That is your style. I wouldn't say I had a style of editing. I have a very normal style of editing, a very straight to the point style of editing. Unless I'm doing a video which has got, I need to edit it for effect if I'm trying to make it look nicer. Then there's some style there, there's some stuff that I use, but it's generally nice images, nice sound flow, trying to make it flow, not jar. But there are no rules. Look how starting to shove in random memes and stuff, and little bits of video and references, like when in a motovlog, when you make a reference to something, you can always cut to, you know, the classic little memes, like don't go full retard.
Never go full retard.
And all that sort of stuff. Now, you'll see quite a few people, now I can't remember where it all started, who first started doing that. Jake was definitely one of the first few to do that. I know I was doing it a while ago. And it just adds something that's funnier. I mean, look at some of Jake's edits and they're just like, it's Jake. It's, if an editor had ADHD, there is what you'd have. And it's Jake's videos. And that's why people love him, because he's nuts. And his editing style is very, it's developed a lot. I will say Jake, because I know he's never going to see this video. Your editing has got really good. And it's so much you that it makes the jokes so much funnier. And just go for it and see what happens. Yes, you will get lots of people probably telling you that this is wrong, you shouldn't do it, you should do it this way, you should do it that way. That's just being on the internet. It doesn't matter what you do, what you say, you're always going to have contrarians, people who say things, say it should be a different way, say it should be their way. They misunderstand that what I'm saying here, this is not the law, this is not the way things are, this is my opinion on it, it's the way I do things. You've come here asking for my opinion, that's what you did when you clicked on the video, you've got it now. But you're always going to have those people that are then going to come to you and say, I don't think so, you're wrong, you don't know what you're talking about, something like that. And they will always surprise you. I mean, as I said, an example was the recent video I made talking about that Moto 2 rider who grabbed the brake of another rider. I don't normally talk about motorsport and stuff like that, but that was just such a cut and dry and over the top. Couldn't believe what I saw. I was so like emotionally hit by it, like what the hell? That I felt like I could make a video about it, because you don't need to know a lot about motorsport to know that. A lot more of the details that come out afterwards you can get from the guy I suggested video. But the point is, that video still has like 25 dislikes, which means that 25 people out there disagree with what I'm saying and think that him grabbing that brake was okay. Or that me suggesting that it might be close to attempted murder, they might think that's going too far. Well, as far as I understand it, the Italian police are actually following that line of a possible attempted murder charge. That's nothing to do with this, but this is to give an example of how something so blatantly, like this is a camera lens, and someone will argue with me that it's not. You know, this is a green cloth. No, it's not, it's red. That's the level of what people will have argue with you, so just don't argue with them really if you can avoid it. Sometimes it's just annoying, but yeah, that's not really got a lot to do with editing, that's more to do with just being a YouTuber in general. But there are my top tips for editing video to be okay. That's your basic understanding of stuff. You now have to use that information and all the other information you get from the other videos, the tutorials and everything that you do, and you just slowly, over time, progress and just make. And as you need to, this is the thing with the programs, once you've learnt the basic editing, you can produce a video. And then you might be like, oh, it'd be funny if I did this. And then you might sit there for a while trying to work out how to do that. Then you might go and watch a YouTube video. Oh, I can't know how to do it. Then you go back and you do it. And over videos, you know, you'll learn more and more tricks to your program. And the longer the more you know your program, because the more that you use it, the faster you get. You know, 2 hours of riding around, I can get down into a couple of 10-minute videos in a couple of hours-ish. Bit like maybe 3 hours or so, if I know, because I've helped myself before. I'm like, I know I talked about things, I know I blocked these out, I can cut that section out, and work on the audio alone. Memory helps, but if you're going to just go through it bit by bit, just follow those rules and you should come out well. Anyway, God, I've been sat here for maybe 2.5 hours doing my photography video and my video editing video because I'm stuck. Not on these things so much because of my back. So thank you very much for watching, thank you for the understanding that I'm not on the bike so much, and thank you for your support. It's amazing and it's needed more than ever. And if you found something helpful in this video, or you found something helpful in the photography video or something, if you feel like chucking me a quid, do it. Catch you next time. Fuck. I'm now stuck like this. Ow. If you enjoyed this video and the other content on the channel, please consider following the links in the description to show your support.